इसमें कॉम्पिटिशन में बहुत ही
Good morning and welcome to MEED's second Smart Construction Virtual Summit. My name is Neha Bhatia and I'm the construction editor of MEED. I'm going to be your panel moderator today and we're going to discuss data center construction in the Middle East. We're covering this topic in recognition of the growing demand for data centers that has been generated thanks to how quickly, how rapidly, and how intensely industries in the region are digitizing across the board. Data center construction was valued at about $21 billion in 2019, and this amount is expected to reach $34 billion by 2026. So there's a lot of investment potential in this sector, and we're hoping to explore that today. I'm joined by three industry experts to discuss this topic and enlighten our viewers. The speakers are James Bevis, who's the Operations Director at ISG, Mr. Rob Nash-Boulden, Director of Data Centers at Hill International, and Mohammed Swedan, the Senior Director and Head of Middle East at Procore Technologies. Thank you for joining us today, gentlemen. I'd like to let our audience know that we are accepting questions that can be answered both during the panel as well as at the end of our discussions. So please feel free to keep posting your queries, your thoughts, any topics that you might like our panelists to comment on, and we'll get to those right away. I'd like to start off our conversation by addressing the most basic query, I think, that comes with any construction project in the Middle East. What are the challenges? What are the challenges of developing data centers in a region like ours, which has its own unique demands that are not always found in other global construction markets? James, would you like to kick us off?
Yeah, thanks, Neha. So just before we jump into answer that question, maybe I could introduce myself and some of the other guys could introduce themselves as well. So just to give just very quickly, so I've got 25 years of experience within the construction industry, specialising in the management of complex engineering and technology projects. And over the last 6-7 years, I've been very much focused on the data centre industry. I've gained experience both operationally and commercially, on projects in the UK, Europe, and in the Middle East, up to values of $1 billion US. Come across many different aspects of procurement, lump sum, two-stage remeasure, using lots of different forms of contract as well, whether that be JCT or NEC or FIDIC, which is most common in the Middle East. What do I do as an operations director? Or what do operation directors do generally for a GC? Well, we try and implement robust strategies to enhance business operations. So we're responsible for operational and financial performance. So this includes the management of work winning, tendering, contractual negotiations and execution, design and engineering, planning, or some people might refer to that as schedule, PMIS, or some people might refer to that as reporting, procurement, health and safety, obviously, environmental sustainability, quality, and basically the whole delivery spectrum. And we work with our direct trades as well as subcontractors, and through to testing and commissioning, project closeout and handover. So I've managed small teams or large teams, and basically what I try and do is ensure an environment of mutual trust, collaboration, and respect. I work for a company called ISG. And what do we do? So ISG is a dynamic global construction service company. And basically, we have a hand in some of the world's most impactful and recognised places. But our legacy is about far more than just buildings. So across Europe, the Middle East and Asia, we deliver places where people and businesses make memories, forge new experiences, and reach their goals. In short, we deliver places that enable people and business to thrive. So that's a bit about me and the company I work for. Maybe I'll hand over to Mo now if you can do your introduction, Mo.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, James. And let me say it's a pleasure to be with you, Rob and Neha, on this panel. So as all of you know by now, my name is Ahmed Introduction. I am the head of Procore for the Middle East and North Africa region. I've been with Procore now for 6 months, and it's been a phenomenal journey so far. The bit of myself, I've been in the IT tech space in this region for 17 years. I've had the luxury and the pleasure, and I'm humbled by working with some of the tech providers like SAP, LinkedIn, Uber, and others. And I just want to say that I really got attracted to this beautiful industry construction because I was able to see how much data and technology can transform that space. And I'm very happy to be with you here today, and I hope you enjoy our panel. Over to you, Rob.
Hey, thanks, Mo. Hi, everybody. I'm Rob Nash-Boulden, and I'm with Hill International. Hill's a global leader in construction management, project controls. We work in aviation, infrastructure, commercial buildings, and technology, which we're talking about today. I'm coming to you today from San Antonio, Texas, where I'm attending the 7x24 Exchange's national conference, which is cool. We're meeting in person in Texas, so we've gone from virtual high fives to handshakes, which has been kind of a fun week. So 3 days here, collaborating on technology and some of the things we're going to talk about today. I've been doing this since about 1999, engineering and constructing facilities worldwide, and I'm looking forward to talking to everybody today. So James, you had a question about challenges.
Yes. Yeah, so thanks, Neha. So getting back to your question, so look, there's definitely been an exponential data demand from businesses, the public sector, and consumers across the world. And you know that the market is seeing, particularly the Middle East market, is seeing. I think it's primed for more significant investment over the next few years. So I suppose one of the first challenges that we see is that basically the region needs to, and I think it needs to create an advantageous environment to facilitate large-scale development of data centers. So particularly the infrastructure, which is pivotal. So I'd expect to see more measures to attract investment, basically favourable development and planning processes. So quite often when data centers, they're not new, but quite often planning processes and regulations don't recognise the data centre facility. So some of those regulations need to be adapted to recognise the data centre facility. It's quite a strange building. Whilst it's large scale, some of them, and there's a lot of equipment in them, actually when they're completed, the people that run them, it's very minimal. So the regulations sometimes need to be adapted to account for that. You know, we need to obviously unlock areas of land in the key corridors where that connectivity is possible. Look, one potential barrier, particularly in the Middle East, is the OPEX cost for a hyperscale, say, because of the warm climate, due to the large power demands and demand for cooling. However, technology is innovating and it's driving efficiencies constantly. And also, I think this factor will become less important because in the Middle East, particularly as well, we find that the CapEx costs are striking a counterbalance. So that's kind of, does that answer the question, Neha? I'll just maybe put it to Mo and Rob to jump in as well.
Yeah.
Well, I'll chime in, Mo, because I'm gonna mention you and I'm gonna mention James too. So what Hill does and what we do from a technology project management perspective, working with PMIS solution providers like Procore, working with main and general contractors like James. This is the heart of what we do. And I'll tell you what everyone is talking about today as the biggest challenge is supply chain. And the clients are tired of hearing about it. They're sick of excuses. They don't want to hear about the Suez Canal. They don't want to hear about lumber prices. they want to know when they're going to get their stuff for their project and how they're going to be able to get online, service their clients, and feed their business. So there is a, and maybe the way we've been fatigued by the pandemic and some of the other things, I think the global clients right now are very challenged and fatigued with this concept of supply chain and some of the problems that we're having keeping up with demand. But tools like Procore, things that we can use to collaborate, I think are going to help us overcome some of those challenges. I don't know, Mo, what do you think?
No, I mean, thank you for that, Rob. You're spot on. I think there are multiple challenges. Let's start by supply chain, a topic that's quite hot at this era and time. And I think the first thing that comes to mind is real-time data. I mean, imagine a world without real-time data. What you tend to see is a reactive approach, firefighting, crisis management. That's typically, the world that not gets the clients and owners also fatigued, but becomes very heavy on the pocket and the timelines. I think when you start looking at real-time data, not only from a knowledge base, but the ability to have predictability to the future, you then have the ability to make decisions today that can resolve for tomorrow. For supply chain, it's as simple as, look, we got to order things today because we can see that in a few weeks we're running out of material, all right? And given the strain on supply and demand, we got to do this earlier on. So what I'm trying to really say is it gives you the power of proactivity rather than reactive approach. And the other challenge I would say, and this is from a personal experience at this time, is there's a lot of collaboration that happens in the construction industry. I'm personally fascinated by that, the amount of collaboration that happens among trades for things to move forward. And when you talk about data center construction, I mean, I think James and Rob touched upon it. It's a complex space. There's a certain sequence of events that need to happen in order for things to progress. So things like having labor lie around becomes even more impactful on the CapEx, to James' point, or adds to that pain and constraint. And then if we look at it from an operator point of view, you need to have information that is available for them, and for them to be able to make decisions out of this information. So really my message out for, all the contractors and that are involved in this, the data center space is a lucrative space, but it's a very small one that is growing for sure. So you got to really equip yourselves with the right tool that will allow you not only to kind of be able to excel in the projects in hand and build the right relationships, but also build a brand in this space that is growing over time.
This is a question for all three of you. You've mentioned many of the challenges that we're bound to face while developing data centers in the region. Would you say there is an awareness gap across the board about, for instance, like Mo pointed out, why it is important to collaborate in the right way with the right quality of data and the right technology? Or like James and Rob pointed out as well, there just sometimes is, an X factor that's almost missing when you're trying to develop these projects. And do you think that X factor might just be a lack of awareness about the true complexity of developing data centers and then operating them for the long term? Rob, James, or anyone?
So I think it's really important that that clients that are looking to build data centers, that they maybe slightly change their approach. So for me, where it works really well, particularly when it comes to complex hyperscale data centers, which is where the market's moving into now. It's about an open and equal partnership approach by all stakeholders. So a shared pain gain scenario really helps so that you can focus on quality and also, that all important completion deadline, because that's what the clients are looking for. They want their data center on the date that they've requested. So to get there, to go on that journey and achieve that, it's much better when we've got this open, equal partnership approach. It makes the project work so much better.
I'll add to what you just said, James. So with Hill, I find our role is, to really sort of reconcile those things. And so many of us are used to sort of staying in our swim lane and being really excellent at what we do. With all the challenges we face today, with all the tools that we're having to bring to design and construction and all the reporting, it's an increasingly complex platform, and you really have to be able to look left and look right and know what the other stakeholders are doing to have success. It's not good enough to just be really good at your part of the project. We're really all in that together, and I think some of the stuff, Mo, that you do probably leads to that as well.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it is a space that it's no longer about working in silos, and it's about having the ability to be on one platform. The collaboration, communication is a key element to the success of complex infrastructure projects like data centers, and it's the way forward. And I think the challenge is not only about awareness; it's also a change of mindset. To what James and you, Rob, are saying. It's a new way. We got to start thinking and operating with the new era by making sure that we're talking to each other, and it's a dual partnership rather than I'm an operator, I'm going to work on my own, you're a GC, you're going to operate on your own. It has to move into that direction. I think that's one of the areas that we kind of speak a lot about, Procore technology, and as a platform, we want to become not only the space where it becomes available for everyone to communicate and collaborate, but it becomes the source of truth. So people have something that they can refer to openly among all stakeholders in that space.
If I think about what Mo just said, and James, this applies to you too. It's not only that it's not just good enough for us to be in our swim lanes and have to work together, but when we're looking at the project types, data centers aren't the end all be all. They're cool and they're a big part of the market, but what we all do in aviation and infrastructure and commercial building technologies, we have to apply that to technology as well. So look across all of your project types, look across your portfolios and all the clients that you serve globally, and try to bring those best solutions to that project in the Middle East, that project that you're working on there. Maybe there's something, James, from past projects that you can apply, and it maybe didn't happen in the Middle East first. So get out of the silos and bring stuff from other kinds of projects to the space.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if I think that's kind of like what we've talked about is quite holistic. And then if you wanted to get Neha into sort of like the detail, I suppose, and quite often the devil is in the detail. It's about also sort of identifying risks really early and coming up with agreed mitigation plans. So that's really essential to a successful delivery. It's playing to the strengths of the wider project team, so that basically innovation can flourish. And then there's lots of lessons learned. There's lots of lessons learned from previous contractors and previous projects and clients where they've built stuff, and really bringing those what we quite often see is we quite often see lessons learned being something that happens on a project where a lessons learned list is set out and gone through on a project, and then quite often just it stops then. What you've got to do is you've got to follow it through with the implementation to make sure that those lessons learned aren't made, that the same mistakes aren't made again.
Mo, do you think technology enables some of what we really need in the market right now, which is more communication, more open, honest communication, so that our projects are more efficient, not just while we're building them, but also once they get to the operation stage?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the role of technology is one that is important in the industry, not only to resolve the current challenges we foresee, but also to James' point, identify risk and mitigate it early enough. For us to be able to do things better, we need to understand what we're doing today, and we need to ensure that we're collecting that data. And when you look at the construction industry and the data center construction, there is no shortage of data in general, right? There's a lot of data that flows around, and the idea of having a platform that allows you to input this data is one thing, but the ability to have that platform to use this data to give you inputs and the ability to either mitigate risk, take care of a supply chain issue that you can foresee, or even get better on the next project you'll be executing on, it's definitely one that has a role for the industry in different areas.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a cliche, doesn't it? But I mean, it's not just data center construction. It's construction. The industry generally is now data driven. That's it is, and so it's really important to have those leading and lagging indicators, isn't it, Mo? And they really help you to forecast and shape and mitigate potential issues that crop up on every project.
I had a question that I think, Rob, you might be interested in answering. It was about how we can design better data centers. And James, I'll come to you for that as well, because you're the one building what's been designed. But if I were to just maybe hear from Rob on what the ideal way to go about it would be, what would be the best practices to sort of incorporate while you're designing data centers for this part of the world?
Wow, that's a hard question. So maybe one of the easy answers is you have to sort of start with the end in mind, and maybe keep it a little simple. I think we make it a little hard sometimes on ourselves. So think about what the outcomes need to be and the best path to get there. There's plenty of cliches along the way about stakeholders and teamwork, and they're not cliches. They're part of the process. I think the amount of digital tools that we use to design with, these digital twins, this desire to have everything that comes out be something that we can 3D print as a model or a facility is certainly where we're headed. It's also a bit aggressive at times. I think we can simplify a lot of that and just sort of make sure that our designs have that end in mind state. If you think about sustainability, if you think about supply chain, if you think about scarce water resources and power resources, and keep some of that stuff really top of mind, I think that helps a lot with design. We can all tell stories maybe where engineers have designed something fantastic, state-of-the-art, impressive, complicated, perhaps, and that doesn't always need to be the way. So I think I had a colleague who used to say simple is reliable a lot, and I think that's a pretty good tenet to maybe latch onto for design. Let's not lose sight of what we have to do to get there, and not make the climb so steep sometimes. Some of the processes that James has and some of the tools that Mo has, I know, help improve that process as well.
Absolutely, and 100% agree with you, Rob. Getting back to basics, getting the basics right is fundamental to any successful delivery on a project, and that includes the design phase as well. Also, going back to what I was saying earlier about making it more of a partnership, and clients struggle with this. Okay, so during the design phase, get the supply chain involved. It's really important. Now, a lot of clients will resist that, because what they'll want to do is they'll want to complete the design. They'll want to then tender the works and find the most competitive price. But it's really important to get that supply chain involved as early as possible, wherever you can, wherever possible. So quite often clients have what we call OFCI equipment, so owner furnished, contractor installed equipment. So they've quite often got agreements in place with a lot of the equipment suppliers, you know, when it comes to the main electrical switchgear, the generators, some of the mechanical equipment. So getting those guys involved in the design phase early, as well as your GC if you can, even if it's just on an initial pre-construction agreement where they haven't secured the project yet, but they can add that really valuable insight into the design, picking up on things like driving safety into the design. Because if you have an accident on a project, it sets you back. It costs money, it costs time, but overall, morally, it's wrong. You know, everybody has the right to go home safe at the end of the day. Logistics is a major point on all data center construction. We've got a lot of infrastructure going in the ground, and making sure that that's sequenced correctly, and making sure that you've continually got a work face that you can get around and other contractors can work in is essential, because logistics can really strangle a project and affect the productivity. Obviously, you know, pretty much now everybody is used to, obviously, you know, BIM and 3D and clash detection, you know, absolute essential part. What we've now started to do is move on to that 4D animation as well. So where you take the BIM model, you take your schedule, and you merge the two, and you can use many different types of software to do that. Synchro is one, Fusar is another, where you produce a 4D animation. And that's not, quite often you see some of these animations in tender submissions by GCs to try and win a project. Okay, that's fluffy. Okay, that's not real. All right, let's be honest. Okay, that's to paint a pretty picture. Where 4D really comes into play is when you're planning the project, so that you can actually see where you've got spatial constraints. You can see where you've got logistical challenges. You can identify where you've got high risk activities, where you need to implement mitigation measures. And that's where technology is really helping our industry, and particularly on data centers.
Mo, would you like to add to that? Just because a lot of what Rob and James have discussed, I think it feeds into just how important technology and PMIS systems are becoming, you know, as we move forward across the construction sector, but particularly for complex projects like data centers. I think the question for you would be, are you seeing more interest in, you know, are you seeing more understanding of how technology such as Procores can support the delivery of these projects? Is there more acceptance and awareness now?
Oh, it's a fair question. I mean, look, at the end of the day, the challenges that are being said, like on the design phase, I mean, it's no secret that, you know, design issues tend to appear in the build phase, right? And when you look at technology and how it can resolve for all of these matters, that's not a small solution. That actually impacts delivery timelines, impacts, you know, the thin margins that everyone is working on. There's a huge impact for technology when it comes to that space. Do we see awareness? Of course we do. We're starting to see a lot of organizations, specifically in the Middle East, you know, starting to adopt technology as a methodology. I think there is a long way for us to go in that space as well. You know, historically, construction has been one that has been reliant on manual processes and siloed, you know, softwares. And the challenges, you know, the scale of construction has increased. The demands of owners, you know, operators have also changed. And, you know, now you see operators more involved in the build phase, and they're demanding visibility and information. And guess what? You know, projects get delayed, you know, issues between stakeholders start happening, and at times, unfortunately, it starts breaking down, right? So the use of technology is critical, right? It will help. We're seeing a lot of awareness, but there's a long way to go in terms of changing the mindset, changing the old ways that we used to operate, starting to embrace newer ways of having platforms that can connect different types of solutions. So there's one single source of data and one single source of truth and one single platform for everyone to kind of connect and collaborate on. So in a nutshell, yes, there's definitely an uptake in the region. There's definitely a lot of organizations that are realizing the use of technology, but there's still a long way in making sure that we kind of shake out the old habits and start building new ones. It's not easy. Change is never easy. But when you look at the outcome and the destination that we're heading to as an organization using technology, that should make it a bit easier.
And it's quite important as well because the visibility that comes with early adoption of technology can help to achieve, like Rob pointed out, some of the end goals. So, for instance, if you want to develop a sustainable data center project, that manages energy efficiently, that is not so power intensive, so water intensive, for instance, the right way to go about it would be to plan ahead. And that planning would begin on day one, it well before, I think, even the design stage. The minute you decide you want to develop a data center, you need to know what the best practices are, what they've been in the last 5 years, where we're headed to. So would you say, all three of you, that technology can actually make projects more sustainable, provided, like Mo pointed out, we shake off the old bad habits?
Maybe.
Absolutely, yeah.
Maybe. James touched on this. I wanted. I'm sorry, I jumped on top of that. If we have sustainable materials, we have special materials in our bill of materials for a project, and what we've just said about supply chain. Our customers, our buildings, they have to get built on time, and sometimes not engaging the supply chain, as James said, leads us to have to use materials that aren't the materials we'd hoped for. So if we're trying to use low CO2 concrete and we haven't engaged and we're not going to be able to get the right mixes on the right days, we're going to end up having to make hard decisions about whether we use the product that we wanted or the product that's available. And I don't know, technology could help us solve for that. It could be one of the tools, James. I'm sorry, I kind of jumped in front of you there.
No, it's fine, Rob. There's already a big push in the construction industry and now data centers as well for sustainable, more environmentally friendly buildings. Now, again, I'm going to put this out there, the elephant in the room. Data centers are not the most environmentally friendly buildings that you can build. In fact, they're fairly un-environmentally friendly. They use a lot of power. They need a lot of cooling. So we do need to make them more sustainable. And there's already a lot of initiatives out there. So, grey water treatment is in use on a lot of data centers. I'd like to see more. So Rob was touching on as well, materials, using more recycled materials, more sustainable materials. And some of these come in from the accreditations that some of the clients put in place, whether they want to achieve an Estadama rating or a LEED rating or a BREEAM rating. Yeah. But I think we could do a lot more in the industry. And I think we should all be driving to challenge and change the way that we're currently building and to make improvements. I don't see enough solar panels on data centers. Every data center's got a big roof. Clients aren't, and particularly the operator sitting within the client's team isn't keen for solar panels to be put on the roof because it can create possibly a leak in people's minds. But if it's done correctly, obviously it won't. So I think more solar power on roofs would be a really good thing. More trees. So planting more trees, particularly around the perimeter of data centers. Normally the perimeter is, it's high security. We quite often see big fences or big walls. Let's stick a load of trees in there as well and some hedges. That's much better for the environment. Trying to reduce plastics as well. So during construction, and this is where the GC can help and the supply chain can help. A lot of our materials to come and they've got lots of packaging around them to protect them. Either change that type of plastic to recyclable plastic or a different type of material is really going to help. And then I think probably on a wider, more broader scale, we need to start thinking more about social value around the local communities where we're building these data centers.
I still couldn't figure out how technology can fix for some of those things. How does that? Maybe Mo knows, because some of those things that we just talked about don't seem like they're technology, but their planning, their communication, their blocking and tackling. Maybe that tools can't solve for everything. I'm not sure.
And look, Rob, you're right. I don't think technology is the only, provider or the only solution in this space from a sustainability point of view. This is going to require more than just technology to kind of be able to get to the space that James, spoke about. I mean, all these are outstanding points, whether it's solar or even thinking of building trees around data center, or giving back to the communities. These are things that, the human element plays a role outside the technology, our processes, our ability to educate, our ability to start, shaking up the old habits. Like old habits are not always about technology and process only, but it's also how we do things. We got to start thinking, how do we do things in the future so we can build a much more sustainable buildings and sustainable data centers. But if you look at it from a technology point of view, if what angle can play, I mean, one of the biggest contributor in sustainability is waste, right? And I mean, there's an FMI report out there that says 35% of the total cost of construction attributes to waste and remedial work. So if we can start by providing operators, with the right data for them to make informed decisions that will impact their process, their project, but more importantly, the environment, I'm sure we'll definitely start making a dent in that number. And it truly starts by the ability of us having the ability to have, predictability during the construction site. And that also simply is driven by the ability of having data. And as I said earlier, we don't have a shortage of data in construction, right? We just gotta make use of it, right? And if we make use of it, I'm sure not only will we make a dent in that number, but will definitely be a bigger contributor towards a sustainable data center construction or sustainable buildings, along everything else James has spoken about.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Mo, isn't it? So, setting those carbon footprint targets for reduction, and then that's that data that drives the forecast, the tracking and reporting against that, to make sure that everybody knows where we're at against those targets. Really helps when you've got a target and you can see how you're doing against that target. It helps you drive to achieve that target, doesn't it? So that that's where the data can really help in technology.
What are some of the lessons that you think we could also learn from other markets where data center construction is perhaps more advanced or has been, part of the sort of industry for longer, because it is a relatively nascent sector in the Middle East, relatively speaking. So what would some of the lessons be that we could learn from the rest of the world?
So probably I'll pick up on that first of all, if that's okay. So I'd probably split this into two elements. There's the actual lessons learned from actual physical construction, and then there's probably the lessons learned in the management of delivery. So I'll pick up on the first one. The big one is modularization, or DFMA, or modern methods of construction. Lots of different terms out there, all means the same thing: modular building. So that's been, some of it's been done in the Middle East. I've done some of it in the Middle East. The more we can do of that, the better. It reduces safety risk. It reduces quality risk. It's you're taking and you're doing construction off-site, so it's cutting down the number of people on site. It's cutting down the makes programs shorter. So we already do a lot of it, but we can do more. Again, we can really push the boundaries. So, a lot of packaged equipment, whether that's packaged electrical rooms, packaged mechanical plant, pump skids. We can see as well, more modularized service distributions when it comes to chilled water or multi-service runs, flue stacks. If you've got a high rise, so some of the data centers we're building now in Europe are more high rise, so they might be, rather than 1 or 2 story, they're going 5, 6 stories. We might see that in the Middle East. So then you've got modular risers. So there's that aspect of it. And then with regards to lessons learned that we can take from other regions as well in the Middle East, it's probably on the management side of it. So again, we probably touched on a little bit before, but collaborative planning sessions. It's really important to have that 12-week look ahead, where the supply chain are involved and everybody's talking about what the plan is. The last planner sessions, when you look 7 days ahead, the daily, the DABS session, the daily activity briefings each day, all of these management tools that need to be implemented in the Middle East, and they really do help mitigate risks, foresee the risks, and make sure that everybody's on the right page, working to the right sequence. When it comes to managing change, that can be, change can be a massive burden for GCs. So it used to be 5, 10, 20 years ago that we would love change, because some clients are on the call listening, we'd make some money off it. Now it's a disaster for us. It ruins our program. We very rarely make money off it. So it's managing change is really important now. Making sure that you identify all of the risks associated with it, making sure you identify the time that's needed for that design element. When it comes to quality, quality is a massive part of data centers. Every client wants zero punch, which is an American term. So when you finish the data center, you hand it over, there are no defects. Operationally, it's very difficult to get back into a data center once it's operational. So how do we deal with that? And some of the things that we can pick up from other regions in the Middle East, is making sure that we benchmark every first installation. Making sure that we've got really robust ITPs, inspection test plans, making sure that we do walk downs before an area is due to be handed over, so that anything can get identified early, together as a team, as a collaborative team. They're some of the things that I think we can improve on.
If I add on to what James said about standardization, about engagement across all the disciplines in the supply chain, I think of process. When Hill looks at our clients around the world and we're analyzing for them, we have to realize many of them haven't done what James does every day for a living. This may be the first time in their career. This may be a one-of-a-kind building in a geography like the Middle East, where it maybe hasn't been built before. I think you need a lot of process around that to have success. You need standardization, you need engagement, you need tools, you need all, but you're gonna need a bunch of process around that, because the owner, he can't be expected to know all those things and drive that excellence. So I think that's a place where I really see that, taking all of the blocking and tackling elements that James just mentioned really marries it up to the owner's expected outcome.
From my end, no, Rob and James nailed it. The only takeaway, and I will just say one sentence, is really what got us here is not what's going to get us, to the next period we want to get to. That's the only takeaway. Everything else, James and Rob just nailed it. So that'll be my only key takeaway for everyone.
You're absolutely right about that. We have a couple of questions from the audience. First question is about opportunities and potential for data center construction in Saudi Arabia. We've seen a lot of news coming out of Saudi in the last 12 to 18 months, particularly from STC, which is really ramping up data center construction. But how do you guys feel about the Saudi market? What are you hearing? What are the sort of conversations that you're having about the kingdom? James, Rob? Mo, anyone?
I'll go. I was sorry. I was gonna see if anyone else wanted to jump on it first. So it's time. We're need to move past interest, and I think we're ready to move past interest. Between private sector and government, between cloud and co-location and enterprise, there is it is a very technologically advanced market, and the time is now. These facilities can't get online soon enough, and I think really the kingdom is a bit probably underserved today in terms of the number and type of facilities. If I look in other parts of the world at the options that exist, there is more in other places. So I think it's something we're going to see a lot of in not just in the coming years, but right now. I think it's imminent. I don't know, James, what do you think?
Yeah, definitely. You know, it kind of goes back to that connectivity. So providing we've got the right connectivity in the region, and again, the region's making it easier for development. So looking at some of those planning processes, data centers will thrive.
Mo, how do you feel about the Saudi market? It is the largest construction market in the region, so I'm sure you're excited about being more involved.
Yeah, I mean, look, earlier today in the day, your colleagues spoke about some of the data around, the kingdom and the exciting stuff that's happening in the coming years. To, Rob's point, it's going to happen, right? If you look at the vision of 2030 in Saudi and everything that's happening around it, technology is an important piece. That's what we've been talking about over the past, 45, 50 minutes between us, to achieve that goal. And we got to start getting bigger collaborations between the private sector and the public sector, and seeing these regulations. When you open data centers in country, they don't only serve the enterprises, but they also allow SMEs to kind of nurture using technologies and be able to grow. So I think Saudi represents a massive opportunity in the data center space. And I think we're going to start seeing more, and that's my personal opinion, more in that space to, everything that Rob and James said earlier about the question as well.
I have one more question here. It says, can new residential projects integrate their own data subcenters and supply to main data center grids, as is often the case with solar power grids? Or would it be a bad idea to decentralize data because of security concerns?
I'm not sure if the question is data or energy or both, but the hub and spoke topology of networks makes that really both possible and difficult at the same time. The way that cloud infrastructures are really constructed today doesn't lend itself very well to that attendee's question. The users tend to consume and the producers tend to produce. The pipe doesn't flow both ways quite as well. But perhaps there is. I mean, certainly there are smart city initiatives, there are edge initiatives where data is collected and processed closer and closer to the application. But cloud and sort of that consume and supply is really most of what I see, guys. What do you see?
Yeah, so I think that at the moment there's a big push for hyperscale data centers. I think in the future we'll probably see more smaller hubs cropping up, and I think that's a good thing. I think it's a good thing to have a mix of both. Whether you can push some data from a small hub into the cloud or not, that's beyond my knowledge, I'm afraid. So I'll have to step out of this one. Sorry.
Yeah, it is outside my knowledge as well. But I mean, I think we got to start by getting data centers, constructed and becoming a norm in the Middle East region as a starting point. I think once we get to that phase, branching out to the next step becomes easier. I think right now we're challenged by having the ability to make that space more popular, more efficient, more sustainable, and seeing it become more popular outside the UAE region, to the points that we're speaking about in Saudi and others. So I think once we get the data center part, and I think it'll be easier to branch out to, newer technologies or getting, residentials connected at a smaller hub. But it's out of my, areas of expertise, so I can't claim any technical knowledge here.
I think what they're really sort of suggesting is maybe just it's going to be distributed cloud, and I think we agree that will occur, that cloud will be distributed, and edge. Mo, we were talking about edge. That I think maybe that's what they're thinking about, and that's certainly going to be possible.
I have time for one last question, which is about edge data centers, and the viewer wants to know if the GCC is ready for edge data centers. Any thoughts?
I mean, I'll pick it up. I co-authored a paper back in 2017 on edge, so I'm a bit of a geek on edge, but everyone's ready for it. It's not a nice to have; it's a must have. The hub and spoke topology, the cloud has to be distributed closer and closer to the applications. There is no place where there won't be lots of edges, so I would say absolutely.
Yeah.
No, Rob, co-authored the white paper, so I'm giving him all the credit on this answer. I'm going to step away. James, over to you.
So I've got, I don't know if I'm missing the question here or missing the point, but slightly maybe a different point on it. So iterative expansion of existing edge data center facilities, for me, it's no longer sufficient to keep pace with the increasing data demand, which is why we're seeing hyperscales coming to the market a lot more, because of the massive increase for data demand.
Okay. Cool. Gentlemen, I think we've covered this topic extensively, and thank you so much for your time. Is there anything I might have missed out on that you'd like to discuss, to share with our audience before we say goodbye?
From my end, I would just want to say thank you to you, Neha, for moderating this panel, and it's been an absolute pleasure being with James and Rob, and hopefully it will be a start of a relationship among the three of us moving forward as well.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Mo.
Yeah, and likewise, I'll echo what Mo said. So it's been a pleasure, and obviously, if anybody in the audience has got any further questions, they can put them onto the feed, and we'll endeavour to try and get back to them.
Yeah, we're running out of time, but any questions that do come in, I promise to email all three of you, because now you've got me interested in the intricacies of this. So yes, I look forward to keeping in touch.
Good. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.